The medical bay of the Galactic Coalition ship Harmony's Edge buzzed with activity. Alien soldiers from dozens of species moved through the sterile corridors, their various forms creating a colorful tapestry of the galaxy's military might. The Zephyrians glided on their four legs, their blue skin shimmering under the artificial lights. The rock-like Grondians stomped heavily, each step echoing through the metal floors. The insectoid Chitauri clicked their mandibles as they communicated in rapid bursts of sound. In the center of this activity lay a small figure on a medical bed that seemed too large for his frame. Human Sergeant Marcus Chun had been unconscious for 3 days following the battle on Kepler 442b. His left arm was wrapped in biofoam, and several monitoring devices beeped steadily around him. To the alien soldiers passing by, he looked fragile and weak. "Look at the little human," chittered Zack, a Chitauri warrior whose exoskeleton bore the scars of many battles. So small and broken. How did his species ever make it to the stars? A group of soldiers gathered around, their laughter filling the medical bay. Grondian Corporal Thokdul's massive stone-like frame shook with amusement. "I heard humans break easily. Their bones are made of some soft calcium compound, not like our crystalline structure." Indeed, hissed Sorora, a serpentine Nagan whose scales rippled with each movement. "On my world, we would have left such a weak creature to die. Only the strong survive the void of space." The gathered aliens continued their mockery, unaware that Marcus was slowly regaining consciousness. His enhanced human hearing, a result of genetic modifications all Coalition soldiers received, picked up every word. But he remained still, his breathing steady as he assessed the situation. Dr. Vexhai, the ship's chief medical officer and one of the few ethereals serving in the military, approached the group with her flowing, translucent form. Her voice carried the wisdom of her ancient species. "Perhaps you should focus on your own recovery rather than mocking a wounded soldier." "Come now, Dr. Thokdul rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "We're just having a bit of fun. Besides, what could this tiny human have possibly contributed to our victory on Kepler 442b? I didn't see him in the main assault." Marcus's fingers twitched slightly, but he maintained his facade of unconsciousness. He remembered the battle clearly. While these soldiers had charged the main fortress, he had been assigned to a different task, a much more dangerous one. Zack's compound eyes glittered with amusement. "I heard from the command staff that he was sent to disable some minor defensive systems, probably pushing buttons while we real warriors fought the Void Syndicate directly." The Chitauri warrior's mandibles clicked rapidly in what passed for laughter among his species. "Humans always get the easy jobs. Their commanders know they can't handle real combat." Sorara's forked tongue flicked out as she tasted the air. "I smell weakness on him even now. Fear and pain. On Naga Prime, we would have consumed him already to gain his strength, though there would be little to gain." More alien soldiers had gathered now, drawn by the commotion. A young Zephyrian named Keela. Nine looked uncomfortable with the mockery, but said nothing. His species was known for their empathy, but peer pressure kept him silent. "You know what I heard?" said a new voice. It belonged to Corvin, a massive Ursoid whose bear-like appearance and aggressive nature had earned him respect throughout the ship. "I heard that human technology is all borrowed from other species. They have no innovations of their own." The crowd murmured agreement. It was a common belief among the Coalition's non-human members that humans had simply copied and combined existing technologies rather than developing anything original. Dr. Vexhai's form flickered with annoyance. "Your ignorance is showing, soldiers. Perhaps you should—" "Doctor," interrupted Commander Torax, a distinguished Centaurian whose 4 legs carried his muscular torso with practiced grace. "Let the soldiers have their entertainment. The human will recover soon enough, and then he can prove himself if he's capable." The commander's dismissive tone stung even more than the soldiers' outright mockery. Marcus had served under Torax for 6 months, had saved the commander's life twice, yet still received no respect. Thokdul leaned closer to the medical bed, his massive form casting a shadow over Marcus. Look at those soft features. Like a child who has never seen real hardship. I've heard human worlds are paradise gardens where they never face real challenges. That would explain their weakness, added Zach. My homeworld of Chitara has acid rain and carnivorous plants. Only the strong survive to maturity. These humans probably never faced anything more dangerous than a mild temperature change. The aliens' laughter grew louder, more cruel. They began sharing stories of their harsh homeworlds, each trying to outdo the others in describing the dangers they had survived. With each tale, their view of humans as soft, pampered creatures grew stronger. Marcus's jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. These soldiers had no idea what Earth was truly like or what humans had endured to reach the stars. They saw only the carefully maintained colony worlds and the peaceful sectors where humanity had flourished after joining the coalition. I wonder if he's ever even killed an enemy, mused Corvin, his massive claws extending and retracting thoughtfully. Humans prefer to fight from a distance, hiding behind technology. Not like us Ursoids who prefer close combat, where you can smell your enemy's fear. Sorara's scales shifted to a mocking pattern. Perhaps he fainted at the sight of blood, and that's why he's been unconscious so long. Negan children show more spine. The mockery continued for nearly an hour, with more soldiers joining the crowd. Stories spread of human cowardice, weakness, and incompetence. Some were exaggerated accounts of real events. Others were complete fabrications. But all served to reinforce the growing narrative that humans were the weak link in the Coalition's military. Dr. Vexhai tried several times to disperse the crowd, but even her authority as chief medical officer couldn't overcome the soldiers' need to vent their frustrations. The battle on Kepler 442b had been costly, with many casualties among the alien forces. Mocking the unconscious human seemed to provide a release valve for their stress and grief. As the afternoon shift began, fresh soldiers arrived to replace those going off duty, but the conversation around Marcus's bed continued. Word had spread throughout the ship about the weak human in Medical Bay 7. Even soldiers who had never seen Marcus before stopped by to add their own observations and jokes. Keela, 9, the young Zephyrian, finally found the courage to speak. Perhaps we should let him rest. He is wounded, after all. Corvin's massive head turned toward the Zephyrian, his small eyes glittering with amusement. Soft-hearted young one, the human would receive no such consideration on any of our homeworlds. Weakness deserves no protection. The Ursoid speaks wisdom, rumbled Thokdal. On Gronder, only the strong are permitted to reproduce. This human's genes would never be passed on. As evening approached, the crowd began to thin, but the damage was done. Word of the pathetic human had spread throughout the ship. In the mess halls, in the training areas, in the crew quarters, soldiers shared stories and jokes about Marcus's supposed weakness and cowardice. What none of them knew was that Marcus had been awake for most of their mockery, listening to every cruel word, every dismissive laugh. His enhanced physiology had healed his injuries faster than Dr. Vexhai expected, but he remained motionless, gathering intelligence on the crew's true feelings toward humans. As the night shift took over and the medical bay grew quiet, Marcus finally allowed himself to open his eyes. Dr. Vexhai, who had remained nearby, immediately noticed his awakening. Sergeant Chun, she said softly, her ethereal voice carrying genuine concern. How are you feeling? Marcus sat up slowly, testing his range of motion. The biofoam had done its work well, and his arm felt almost normal. I'm fine, doctor. How long was I unconscious? 3 days. You suffered severe injuries in the battle, including significant blood loss and multiple fractures. However, your recovery rate has been remarkable. Dr. Vexhai's form shimmered as she consulted her medical displays. I've seen few species heal so quickly. Marcus nodded, then looked directly at the ethereal. Doctor, I heard some of the conversation while I was unconscious. The crew seems to have some strong opinions about humans. Dr. Vexhi's form dimmed with what might have been embarrassment. I apologize for their behavior, Sergeant. Battle stress often brings out the worst in soldiers. They don't truly understand what they're saying, don't they? Marcus swung his legs off the medical bed and stood, testing his balance. Doctor, I've served with these beings for months. This isn't battle stress. This is how they really see us. The ethereal couldn't argue with his assessment. In her centuries of life, she had seen many species join the coalition, and humans had faced more prejudice than most. Their rapid technological advancement and seemingly peaceful nature had led many to view them as weak opportunists rather than capable allies. Marcus began gathering his gear from the storage unit beside his bed. His combat armor, weapons, and personal effects had been carefully maintained during his recovery. As he dressed, he could feel Dr. Vexhi's concerned gaze upon him. Sergeant, she said quietly, what are you planning to do? Marcus secured his sidearm and checked his communicator. Several urgent messages waited, all marked with high-priority encryption. His expression grew serious as he read them. My job, Doctor. Nothing more, nothing less. He looked up at her, and she was surprised by the calm determination in his human eyes. But I think it's time this crew learned a few things about humans they didn't know. Dr. Vexhi watched as Marcus walked toward the medical bay exit, his movements precise and controlled despite his recent injuries. Something in his demeanor had changed during his unconsciousness, or perhaps she was simply seeing him clearly for the first time. Sergeant, she called after him, be careful. The crew's attitude may be wrong, but antagonizing them won't help. Marcus paused at the doorway and looked back. Doctor, I appreciate your concern, but you don't understand. I'm not planning to antagonize anyone. I'm planning to do exactly what they think I can't do. As Marcus disappeared into the corridor, Dr. Vexhi found herself wondering what the human sergeant had in mind. In all her years of medical service, she had learned to read the intentions of dozens of species, but humans remained largely mysterious to her. What she didn't know was that the urgent messages on Marcus's communicator contained intelligence about a new Void Syndicate operation. An operation that would require exactly the kind of skills and courage that the crew believed humans lacked. The ship continued on its course through hyperspace, its crew unaware that they were about to receive a very harsh lesson about underestimating their human allies. In the quiet of the medical bay, only Dr. Vexhi remained awake, wondering what the morning would bring. She had a feeling that the crew's opinions about humans were about to change dramatically. Whether that change would come through respect or shock, she couldn't say. But she was certain that Sergeant Marcus Chun was not the weak, frightened creature the soldiers believed him to be. As she reviewed his medical files one more time, several details caught her attention. Details that the mocking soldiers had overlooked or dismissed. Marcus's genetic markers showed modifications far beyond the standard coalition enhancement package. His reaction times, even while unconscious, had been remarkably fast. Most telling of all, his stress hormone levels during the crew's mockery had remained perfectly stable. Whatever Marcus Chun truly was, Dr. Vexhi realized he was definitely not what the crew believed him to be. And tomorrow, she suspected, everyone on the ship would discover that fact for themselves. Marcus Chun stood in the ship's communication center at 0300 hours, the quiet hum of hyperspace engines providing background noise to his work. The messages he had received were worse than he initially thought. Intelligence indicated that a Void Syndicate fleet was preparing to attack Refuge Station, a civilian outpost housing over 2 million beings from across the galaxy. The station served as a humanitarian center for refugees from worlds devastated by the ongoing war. Families who had lost everything, children separated from their parents, elderly beings with nowhere else to go. It was protected only by its neutrality status, and a small defensive force that wouldn't last 10 minutes against a serious assault. Marcus pulled up the tactical displays, his enhanced human vision allowing him to process the complex data streams faster than most Coalition computers. The Void Syndicate's battle plan was elegant in its brutality. 3 heavy cruisers would disable the station's shields and weapons while smaller ships would dock and begin systematically eliminating the civilian population. What made this attack particularly sinister was its purpose. The Syndicate wasn't after resources or strategic advantage. They wanted to send a message to the Coalition that nowhere was safe, that neutrality meant nothing, and that mercy was weakness. The Harmony's Edge was the closest Coalition vessel to Refuge Station, but they wouldn't arrive until 12 hours after the attack began. By then, it would be a rescue mission, not a defense operation, unless someone could reach the station first and prepare its defenses. Marcus studied the hyperspace routes and engine specifications of every ship in the Coalition fleet. Only one vessel could possibly reach Refuge Station in time to make a difference. The problem was it would require someone to pilot a single-seat interceptor through a series of dangerous hyperspace jumps that most aliens considered impossible. The interceptor Ghost Runner sat in the ship's fighter bay, a prototype designed by human engineers but never tested in actual combat. Its hyperspace drive could theoretically make the journey to Refuge Station in 8 hours, arriving with enough time to coordinate the station's defenses and possibly call for additional support. The catch was that the journey would require navigating through the Maelstrom Fields, a region of space where hyperspace currents created deadly gravitational shears. Most species' neural structures couldn't process the rapid calculations needed to survive the trip. The Grondians were too slow, the Chitauri too rigid in their thinking, the Nagans too dependent on group consciousness. Humans, however, had something the other species lacked. Their brains had evolved to handle multiple complex tasks simultaneously, a result of their world's chaotic environment and social structure. What the aliens saw as inferior multitasking was actually humanity's greatest strength in situations requiring split-second decisions and adaptive thinking. Marcus began running calculations on the interceptor's systems. The ship would need modifications to handle the stress of the Maelstrom fields, and he would need to configure the navigation systems for real-time course corrections. Most challenging of all, he would have to do it without alerting the crew to his plans. As he worked, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Marcus quickly minimized his displays and pulled up routine maintenance schedules just as Corvin entered the communication center. The massive Ursoid snorted with amusement upon seeing Marcus. Well, the little human is awake. I thought you would sleep for another week after your ordeal. Marcus looked up from his display with carefully neutral expression. Just catching up on reports, Corporal Corvin. 3 days is a long time in a war zone. Corvin's claws extended slightly, a sign of aggressive amusement among his species. Yes, I'm sure you have much to catch up on. Tell me, human, what exactly did you do during the battle on Kepler 442b? The official reports are quite vague about your contribution. This was the moment Marcus had been preparing for. The crew's mockery had revealed their complete ignorance of his actual mission, which meant security protocols had worked exactly as intended. His real assignment had been classified far above the clearance level of most ship personnel. I was assigned to disable secondary defensive systems, Marcus replied, sticking to the cover story. Nothing too exciting. Corvin's laughter boomed through the small space. Secondary systems. I knew it. While real warriors like myself were storming the main fortress and engaging enemy battlecruisers, you were hiding behind computer terminals. Marcus nodded agreeably. Computer work isn't very glamorous, but someone has to do it. The Ursoid leaned closer, his massive form intimidating in the confined space. You know, human, some of the crew have been wondering why your species was even admitted to the Coalition. What exactly do humans bring to our alliance that we couldn't accomplish ourselves? It was a loaded question, one that revealed the depth of anti-human sentiment aboard the ship. Marcus chose his words carefully. I suppose that's for the Coalition Council to decide, Corporal. I just follow orders. Corvin's eyes glittered with malicious pleasure. Such humility, or perhaps such awareness of your limitations. I've served with dozens of species, human, and I've never met one as passive as yours. Marcus maintained his calm demeanor, even as he mentally cataloged Corvin's weaknesses. The Ursoid's overconfidence was typical of his species, and his assumption that humans were passive showed a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. "If you'll excuse me, Corporal," Marcus said politely, "I need to finish these reports before my shift ends." Corvin straightened up, satisfied with what he saw as human submission. "Of course. Wouldn't want to keep you from your paperwork." As the Ursoid left, Marcus immediately returned to his real work. He had 6 hours before the next shift change, and he needed to complete the interceptor modifications without being detected. The engineering bay would be lightly staffed during the night cycle, giving him the access he needed. Marcus made his way through the ship's corridors, noting the casual dismissal in the eyes of every alien soldier he passed. Word of his weakness had spread throughout the crew, and their contempt was palpable. None of them bothered to return his regulation salutes, and several made derogatory comments in languages they assumed he couldn't understand. What they didn't know was that Marcus's language implants included not just official coalition languages, but dozens of dialects and colloquialisms. He understood every insult, every joke at his expense, every casual dismissal of human courage and capability. The engineering bay was dimly lit during the night cycle, with only 2 technicians on duty. Both were Zephyrians, a species known for their focus and attention to detail. They barely acknowledged Marcus's presence as he made his way to the fighter maintenance area. The Ghost Runner was exactly as he remembered from the design specifications. Sleek, fast, and packed with experimental technology that pushed the boundaries of current engineering. The humans who designed it had incorporated lessons learned from studying dozens of alien technologies, but they had also added innovations that were uniquely human. Marcus began his modifications systematically. First, he upgraded the inertial compensation system to handle the gravitational stresses of the maelstrom fields. Then, he reconfigured the navigation computer to process multiple hyperspace route calculations simultaneously. Finally, he installed additional power coupling to support the increased energy demands of rapid course corrections. Each modification was subtle, designed to look like routine maintenance to casual observation. Marcus had learned long ago that the best way to hide something was to make it look ordinary and boring. As he worked, he reflected on the crew's assumptions about human technology. They believed humans simply copied alien innovations without adding anything original. The truth was far more complex. Humans had a unique gift for synthesis, for taking existing concepts and combining them in ways that created entirely new possibilities. The Interceptor's hyperspace drive was a perfect example. The basic technology came from ethereals, but human engineers had modified it with Grandian crystalline matrices, Chitauri computational networks, and Nagin binaural interfaces. The result was a system that was more than the sum of its parts. By 0700 hours, Marcus had completed his modifications. The Ghost Runner was now capable of making the journey to Refuge Station, though the trip would still be extremely dangerous. He uploaded the flight plan to his personal storage device and began preparing for the final phase of his mission. The hardest part will be leaving the ship without being detected. The Harmony's Edge was still in hyperspace, which meant he would have to launch during a scheduled maintenance window when the ship's sensors will be temporarily offline. Marcus returned to his quarters and began gathering the equipment he would need: his personal weapons, emergency supplies, and, most importantly, his authorization codes for accessing coalition defensive networks. As a human intelligence operative, he had clearance levels that most of the crew couldn't even imagine. At 0800 hours, the morning shift began, and Marcus made his way to the mess hall for what might be his last meal aboard the ship. The alien soldiers' mockery continued, but now it felt distant and irrelevant. In a few hours, they would understand exactly what humans were capable of. He sat alone at a small table, methodically eating his rations while reviewing the mission parameters one final time. The mathematics were stark. Even if everything went perfectly, his chances of surviving the trip through the maelstrom fields were less than 60%. But the alternative was allowing 2 million innocent beings to die while a coalition ship full of warriors arrived too late to help. Zack, the Chitauri warrior, approached his table with several companions. Look, the human is eating alone. Even his own food doesn't want to associate with him. The group's laughter was loud enough to draw attention from across the mess hall. Marcus looked up calmly and nodded acknowledgement before returning to his meal. Such stoicism, chittered another Chitauri. Or perhaps he simply doesn't understand that he's being mocked. Human intelligence is quite limited, I hear. Thakdol's massive form cast a shadow over the table. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, human. I'm curious about something. Have you ever actually killed an enemy in combat? Marcus chewed thoughtfully before answering. I follow coalition rules of engagement. Corporal, that's not an answer, rumbled the Grondian. A simple yes or no will suffice. Marcus set down his utensils and looked directly at Thakdol. For just a moment, something flickered in his human eyes that made the massive alien step back involuntarily. The Coalition doesn't require me to discuss operational details with crew members who lack appropriate clearance, Marcus said quietly. The response surprised the gathered aliens. It was the first time the human had shown any backbone, any hint that he might be more than the weak creature they believed him to be. Corvin arrived at the table, drawn by the commotion. Problems here? No problems, Marcus replied, standing and clearing his tray. I was just explaining that some information is classified above certain clearance levels. The Ursoid's eyes narrowed. Are you implying that you have higher clearance than senior NCOs? Marcus smiled politely. I'm not implying anything, Corporal. I'm simply stating Coalition security policy. As he walked away, the gathered aliens exchanged confused glances. The humans' response had been unexpected, hinting at depths they hadn't suspected. But their prejudices were too strong to overcome with a single exchange. Probably just trying to sound important, Zack chittered dismissively. Humans are known for their delusions of grandeur. But Corvin continued to stare after Marcus, a nagging doubt beginning to form in his mind. There had been something in the human's eyes, something that suggested hidden depths beneath the mild exterior. Marcus returned to his quarters and began the final preparations for his mission. He changed into his stealth suit, a piece of human technology that could fool most alien sensors. He loaded his weapons and equipment into a kit that could be quickly transferred to the interceptor. At 1,200 hours, the ship's maintenance cycle would begin, giving him a 30-minute window to launch undetected. He spent the remaining time reviewing intelligence reports and tactical data, memorizing every detail that might help him save Refuge Station. As the maintenance cycle approached, Marcus made his way to the fighter bay through service corridors that avoided the main crew areas. He had one last task to complete before leaving, something that would ensure the crew eventually understood what had really happened. He activated his personal communicator and began recording a message for Commander Torax. A message that would be automatically transmitted after he was already through the first hyperspace jump, too far away to be recalled. Commander, he began, his voice calm and professional. By the time you receive this message, I will already be en route to Refuge Station to coordinate its defense against an imminent Void Syndicate attack. The attached intelligence files contain full details of the threat and my mission parameters. Marcus paused, considering his next words carefully. I want the crew to know that I heard every word of their conversation while I was unconscious. Every joke, every insult, every expression of contempt for my species. I also want them to know that their opinions are about to be tested in the most direct way possible. He sealed the message with his authorization codes and set it for automatic transmission. Then he made his way to the Ghost Runner and began the launch sequence. As the maintenance cycle began and the ship's sensors went offline, Marcus launched into the void of hyperspace, beginning a journey that would either save 2 million lives or prove the crew's assessment of human limitations correct. Behind him, the Harmony's Edge continued on its course, its crew unaware that their weak, human colleague was about to undertake one of the most dangerous missions in Coalition history. The Maelstrom Fields lived up to their reputation as the most dangerous region of space in a known galaxy. Marcus Chun gripped the controls of the Ghost Runner as gravitational shears threatened to tear his small craft apart. The hyperspace currents here were chaotic, unpredictable, and deadly to anyone lacking the reflexes to make split-second course corrections. His human brain processed dozens of variables simultaneously. Gravitational gradients, hyperspace density fluctuations, engine stress parameters, and navigation calculations all flowed through his consciousness in a constant stream of data. What would have overwhelmed most alien neural structures was simply how humans had evolved to think. The first major shear came, without warning, a gravitational wave that could have crushed the interceptor like an empty can. Marcus's hands moved across the controls with fluid precision, adjusting thrust vectors and hyperspace field harmonics in a dance of survival that lasted less than 3 seconds but required perfect timing. "Come on," he muttered to his ship, feeling the hull strain against forces that defied comprehension. "We got people counting on us." The Ghost Runner responded to his touch like a living thing, its hybrid systems adapting to each new challenge with the flexibility that human engineering brought to alien technology. Marcus had designed many of the modifications himself, drawing on his years of experience with both human innovation and alien physics. Another shear, this one a twisting vortex that tried to spin the ship into a death spiral. Marcus countered with a maneuver that would have seemed impossible to most pilots, using the gravitational forces against themselves to slingshot through the danger zone. As he flew, his mind drifted to the crew of the Harmony's Edge and their dismissive attitudes toward human capabilities. They had no idea that humans had been fighting for survival since before they had learned to make fire. Earth had not been the peaceful paradise they imagined, but a world that had forged humanity in the crucible of constant struggle. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, predators, disease, and, most dangerous of all, other humans. Humanity had survived them all not through superior strength or natural armor, but through adaptability, creativity, and an absolute refusal to give up when facing impossible odds. The navigation computer began chiming warnings as another wave of gravitational distortions approached. This one was massive, a storm front of twisted space-time that stretched across several light years. Marcus studied the sensor readings and realized that conventional navigation would be suicide. He needed to think like a human, instead of trying to go around or through the distortion. Marcus began calculating a series of microjumps that would use the gravitational waves themselves as stepping stones. It was a technique that existed only in theoretical papers written by human physicists, never tested in actual practice. Time to find out if human theory translates to alien reality, Marcus said to himself as he began the first microjump. The Ghost Runner flickered in and out of normal space, riding gravitational waves like a surfer riding ocean swells. Each jump required precise timing and exact positioning, with no margin for error. One miscalculation would scatter his atoms across several star systems. For 20 minutes, Marcus danced with death itself, using mathematics and intuition in equal measure to navigate through impossible conditions. When he finally emerged from the storm front, his instruments showed that he had actually gained time, arriving at Refuge Station 2 hours ahead of his most optimistic projections. Refuge Station appeared on his sensors as a sprawling complex of interconnected modules and habitation rings, home to over 2 million beings from across the galaxy. It was beautiful in its diversity, with architectural styles from dozens of worlds blended into a harmonious whole. Marcus opened a communication channel to the station's command center. Refuge Station Control, this is Coalition Interceptor Ghost Runner, requesting immediate priority docking and emergency conference with station leadership. The response came quickly, tinged with confusion. Coalition vessel, we show no scheduled arrivals for your ship. Please transmit authorization codes and mission parameters. Marcus uploaded his credentials, along with the intelligence files about the impending Void Syndicate attack. There was a long pause as the station's command staff reviewed the information, followed by a flurry of activity as alarms began sounding throughout the complex. Station Commander Yelnara, an elderly ethereal whose wisdom had made her a natural choice to lead the refugee center, appeared on Marcus's communication screen. Her translucent form flickered with anxiety as she spoke. Sergeant Shun, this intelligence suggests we have less than 4 hours before the attack begins. Our defensive capabilities are minimal, designed only to deter pirates and raiders, not military assault fleets. Marcus was already reviewing the station's defensive systems through his tactical interface. What he saw was not encouraging. A handful of point defense weapons, shields designed for asteroid deflection rather than combat, and no military vessels within range except his single interceptor. Commander, Marcus said calmly, I need to know exactly what resources we have available. Every weapon, every shield generator, every piece of equipment that could possibly be weaponized. We're going to turn this refugee station into a fortress. Yelnara's form brightened slightly with hope. Our engineering staff includes some of the galaxy's most brilliant minds, refugees from worlds destroyed by the Syndicate. If anyone can perform miracles, they can. Over the next hour, Marcus worked with the station's diverse engineering teams to implement desperate modifications to their defensive systems. The Grondian engineers reinforced the shield generators with crystalline matrices that could absorb and redirect energy. The Chitauri specialists reprogrammed the point defense systems for maximum efficiency. The Nagan biotechnicians created adaptive targeting systems that could predict enemy movements. But it was the human refugees who made the real difference. Engineers and scientists who had lost everything to the war, but still carried their knowledge and creativity. Working with Marcus, they began implementing modifications that combined human innovation with alien technology in ways that surprised even their creators. Sargent, called Dr. Sarah Kim, a human physicist who had been working on theoretical weapon systems before her world was destroyed. I've been reviewing the station's power grid, and I think we can create a surprise for our visitors. Marcus looked over her calculations and smiled grimly. Dr. Kim had figured out how to turn the station's main reactor into a directed energy weapon, essentially converting the entire facility into a massive gun. It was dangerous, potentially suicidal, but it might give them the edge they needed. Do it, Marcus ordered. But make sure we can control the discharge precisely. We'll only get one shot. As the modifications continued, Marcus reached out to Coalition Command through quantum communication relays, requesting immediate reinforcement for Refuge Station. The response was frustrating, but predictable. The nearest Coalition fleet was 18 hours away, and Military Command considered the station a lost cause. Sergeant Chun came the voice of Admiral Koresh, a Centaurian commander known for his strategic brilliance. While we appreciate your initiative, you must understand that sacrificing one interceptor and a handful of civilians will not prevent this attack. I strongly recommend that you evacuate what refugees you can and withdraw to a safe distance. Marcus's response was calm, but firm. Respectfully, Admiral, 2 million beings are counting on us to protect them. I intend to do exactly that. Sergeant, Admiral Koresh's voice carried the patience of someone explaining the obvious to a child. You are one human in a single fighter craft. The Void Syndicate is sending 3 heavy cruisers and supporting vessels. This is not a situation where courage can overcome mathematics. Sir, Marcus replied, with respect, you don't know what humans are capable of. The communication ended with Admiral Koresh's dismissive laughter echoing through the channel. It was a sound Marcus had heard many times before, the galaxy's assumption that human bravado was a poor substitute for actual ability. Marcus returned to the station's command center, where Commander Yelnara was coordinating evacuation procedures for the most vulnerable refugees. Her ancient wisdom told her that preparation for disaster was always prudent, even when hoping for miracle. Sergeant, she said softly, I must ask you directly, Do you truly believe we can survive this attack? Marcus looked out through the command center's observation ports at the vast expanse of the refugee station. Families were going about their daily routines, children playing in the recreation areas, elderly beings tending gardens that reminded them of lost homeworlds. They trusted the Coalition to protect them, and the Coalition had failed them. "Commander," Marcus said finally, "I don't know if we can win, but I know we can make the Syndicate pay a price they'll never forget. And sometimes that's enough." The ethereal's form shimmered with something that might have been pride. "Then we stand together regardless of the outcome." Marcus spent the remaining time before the attack reviewing every detail of the station's modified defenses. The refugees had performed miracles with limited resources, but they were still vastly outgunned. Victory would require not just courage and skill, but the kind of innovative thinking that had carried humanity to the stars. As the sensors detected the first Void Syndicate ships dropping out of hyperspace, Marcus climbed into the Ghost Runner and powered up its systems. The Interceptor had been modified during the past few hours, equipped with weapons and defensive systems cannibalized from throughout the station. "Refuge Station Control, this is Sergeant Chun." He broadcast on an open channel that the approaching enemy would certainly monitor. "I am engaging the Void Syndicate fleet. All civilians should take shelter in the designated safe zones." The response from the Syndicate fleet was immediate and mocking. "Attention, Coalition fool," came a harsh voice speaking accented Galactic Standard. "You are facing the Dreadnought, Eternal Darkness, and 2 heavy cruisers. Surrender now, and we will make your death quick." Marcus's response was calm and professional. "Void Syndicate vessels, you are approaching a Coalition-protected facility. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The enemy's laughter echoed across the communication channels. "One tiny fighter against our fleet? You humans truly are as stupid as we have heard." "Well," Marcus said to himself as he launched from the station's docking bay, "let's show them what one stupid human can do." The Ghost Runner accelerated toward the approaching fleet, its hybrid systems pushing performance far beyond original specifications. Marcus had no illusions about his chances in a direct confrontation, but he didn't plan to fight fairly. Humans had learned long ago that survival often depended on changing the rules of engagement. Behind him, Refuge Station powered up its modified defenses and prepared for a battle that would either save 2 million lives or serve as a monument to human stubbornness in the face of impossible odds. As the first enemy missiles streaked toward him, Marcus Chun smiled grimly and began to show the galaxy exactly what humans were capable of when everything they cared about was on the line.